So in this video, we are going to talk a little bit about how to come up with your sketch for your abstract assignment. So refer back to the assignment itself and all the requirements of what you need to do for the assignment as you begin working on this. So, so in this video, I'm just going to demonstrate how to approach this assignment. Most students get really excited when we do abstract project because it's, number one, not something realistic, and so it doesn't involve the same set of skills. It just involves a different set of skills. So don't let this confuse you that this is going to be super easy, because actually this is the hardest part of being able to come up with your idea. And establish your rules for your assignment. Once you get those rules established and you know what you're going to do, then the rest is actually really quite enjoyable and a fun experience, because you do get the creativity to be able to explore and do what you want to do. So a couple of things. We're going to base our work off of the ideas and the approach that George O'Keeffe took, in that we're going to base our abstract art off of the interesting shapes, colors, textures, whatever we can see in natural objects. So I've got a big collection of bones and some skeletons. This is one of my favorite ones here. This is a beaver skull, which is super cool. You can see these really gnarly looking teeth and this very, very interesting shape skull here, the head. So I've taken a couple of pictures, and you can do this in lots of different ways, just whatever works best for you. I've taken a couple of pictures and I've started a couple sketches here just to speed up the video a little bit. But you want to spend some time really kind of looking at your object. What is it that you find interesting? I love the color of the teeth here, so I'm going to use that. Just kind of this very rich orange, natural earthy color, which I think is really quite beautiful. I love a lot of the shapes. So you're going to spend some time really kind of deciding what part of this is the most interesting view, and what's going to make a good painting for you. What can you really pull out? You can look at it straight on, or you're going to look at it from upside down, or how are you going to look at this? Okay, there's lots of different ways to be able to narrow in on this. And you can make it as abstract or as real as you want. Let me show you a couple examples here. I used to do this with my watercolor class all the time. And so these are a couple of assignments, paintings that they did in the class. Yours, of course, is not going to look like this, because watercolor can do lots of things that oil painting cannot. But these are all based off of bones. I've got a bunch of flowers, but I'm going to leave it really open as far as what it is that you want to depict. But these are just a couple of some of the student examples that we've done. And the biggest thing, besides abstraction, is I want to see that you're learning and experimenting with the colors that you use and the colors you make. For the oil painting, the watercolor class, when they did these, they had to experiment with painting techniques to get all these different textures and whatnot. So you won't have the ability to do that, because oil paints won't do that. But you can see some of them are very abstract, where you can't recognize anything. But the idea is that you're inspired by these objects, versus something like this, which is much more realistic. You can take that approach as well. So how abstract you want to make it is really up to you, just as long as it meets all those requirements that we've talked about in class. And so I'm going to do a couple different approaches here. And my drawing here, I'm going to fix that camera angle there. So I've got a couple pictures that I took on my iPad. To kind of give me an idea. I liked kind of this side angle view, and which I sketched out already. Okay, and this one I didn't abstract the design so much. I thought that I would abstract more of the colors that I used, and not so much the design. But another view I found was kind of interesting was this one here, kind of a view from underneath, which really made an unrecognizable view of the beaver skull, but it still had some really cool stuff going on. It kind of reminds me of like some alien, off of the movie Alien. So I've kind of sketched out really lightly over here on my piece of paper here. And this is, like I said, this is going to be the most important part of the assignment, is taking the time to look at your object and to figure out what it is that you really like and enjoy about the object, and making it into an interesting painting that's going to fit all the requirements that we've got. So I've got it sketched out up over here. So over here I kind of lightly sketched out this underside view, and I thought, which one I'd like the best. And then I'd do that one for my third sketch over here to give you an idea of, which of the three I'm going to do. So I've got it kind of really lightly sketched out with my pencil, and now I'm going to spend just a little bit of time here and really kind of put in some more details just so I have an idea of what it's going to look like. This is just a rough sketch, so it does not have to be super detailed. We are going to color these. I do want you to color them after you get your sketches done, because I want to see how color affects your design, and also what color scheme you're going to use. And so let's start out here. I've got kind of my focal point here is the main thing I want to worry about. I want to have a clear focal point that draws my eye into the piece, but is not right here in the center. Okay, so there's lots of different ways you can create your focal point. Typically, your focal points are created by the most interesting object and the most contrast. So if I'm looking at my photo, this reference photo here, if I'm going to try to get the glare away, I can see there's kind of a natural focal point up here with this little hole into the brain cavity of the skull here, which creates an interesting contrast, and everything kind of angles out and radiates out from that one point there. It's got this nice symmetry that goes up the middle here and converges kind of at this point here. So this makes a very natural focal point. And so I want to make sure as I paint this in that I'm going to keep my focal point up over here, which you notice if we're following the rule of thirds, if I divide it up in thirds this way, let's go a little bit higher with that one, or in thirds this way, it's going to easily take up this area here. I want to keep my focal point over up here as opposed to right here in the middle. Okay, that helps to pull my eye in and around the entire composition. If I kept my focal point here in the middle, that's going to be like a bullseye, a black hole that sucks all your attention in here, and you're not allowed to escape your gaze into other areas. And so you want to make sure rule of thirds is just a great way to make a nice composition that considers filling the whole space. I don't want a lot of empty space, so I'm going to try to fill up this space with shapes. So in this one here, my first sketch, you can see that I filled it up almost entirely and left a little bit of room around these areas here. So you got to be careful with that. I don't want to draw something where the sides touch any side of my object. Okay, that's going to be a real distracting point. We want to draw our view into this space here. So I want to keep my center of interest probably up in this area over here. And so whatever I do with my color and my texture, I want to try to pull it over here, possibly down over here. So, but anything right here in the middle. Okay, so you want to avoid that. You don't want to put your center of interest in a corner, touching any of the sides here. Okay, pretend there's like an electric fence. You don't want your focal point to touch that fence and get shocked. You want to give a comfortable space. So either extend it off. If I wanted to exaggerate this and bring it out, I would extend it off of this picture plane or in, but never right along the side. Okay, I don't want this come over here and then just touch this and back. It just looks really quite awkward. Okay, so avoid those things as you're sketching it out and as you're coming up with your ideas. So anyway, back to this idea here. So if I kind of give this symmetry down in the middle and I want to maintain my focal point over here, I can start off by drawing this my center of interest here first. Okay, making that kind of clear. And then it's got these really cool little shapes here that maybe I want to just draw more on the lighter side. But this is just my sketch. I'm going to spend most of my time, I need to go in a little bit more. I'm going to spend most of my effort and most of my time on the actual assignment and not so much this sketch. The sketch is just to give me an idea of how everything's going to fit together and how I want to use all my space. So don't waste a lot of time putting in a lot of detail, but also at the same point, don't skip through this. This is going to answer a lot of the questions. If you're struggling with your project, it's probably because you did not spend enough time in this part of the assignment figuring out what everything was going to look like. Okay, so that's going to come over this way. Got these cool little arches that come up and over. Try to keep it symmetrical, but I don't have to. I love how that kind of comes in. Does some really cool shapes and whatnot in here. Let's bring that over here. So I want to include just enough detail that I know what it's going to look like. Like I said before, I think these teeth make a really cool sense of repetition through this area here. So I can exaggerate those too. It doesn't have to be exactly as I see it in the picture here. I can go in if I want to make these bigger, which I'm going to make these just a little bit bigger because I like that little rhythm that it gives here. And I'm going to extend this off the bottom here and then just bring this up and over. Kind of like that. So that kind of gives me an idea of what, I kind of like that. I think that seems very organic. I'm not going to fuss over a lot of the detail, but I do want to kind of get an idea of what it's going to look like. Okay, so this would be my second sketch, and now I think I'm going to take this idea and maybe draw it again, but really kind of abstract things a little bit more, and then we'll talk about how to add some color. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video for a second, and then we'll go into the second part where I'll have my other sketch here complete, and then we'll talk about maybe the use of color in some areas as you figure out your sketch.